Welcome back. This is, of course, Goku-san DBZ, and today looking at 10 of my personal favorite Dreamcast game covers, cover art wise. In the future, off and on, I will do this on occasion, looking at 10 of my personal favorite cover arts of all time of specific consoles. This time I chose the Dreamcast, which is, of course, as you know by now, my all time favorite game console. This is just 10 of my personal favorite cover art designs that I like from specifically different styles, looking at both the Japanese and the American, but expect the American or the Japanese version art to supersede in most of these spots because the Japanese know how to make excellent cover art for their games. So I have to give them a lot of credit where credit's due. First up on the honorable mention side of things, we have specifically a couple of honorable mentions. First up, we have Rayman II. Now, Rayman II, I do like the cover art. I think it's pretty good. It gets an honorable mention because, yeah, it's somewhat simplistic, like many 3D platformers at the time. Cover art may not be the greatest overall, but I still like it, and it does give you a very good look at how the character Rayman obviously is going to look in the actual game. It's very honest, at least with the design, arguably. Of course, this is the best version of Rayman 2, but I think the cover art is pretty good, and I think it goes actually really good with the Dreamcast style of the case. Which in the future sometime I may look at my personal favorite, like, overall console, like, design layout things to go with the artwork. But for now, yep, first honorable mention goes to Rayman 2, which I think is good. And next, the only other honorable mention, look at more the Japanese version, because unfortunately I don't still have the American version case for Soul Calibur 1. But the second of the two honorable mentions is Soul Calibur 1 art. I do like it. It's definitely a unique style, I will say, for the most part, of definitely art. It's definitely very different from many other fighting games, especially to 3D fighting games of the time period. For the most part, though, I do like it, and I think the cover art goes pretty good with the classic Japanese style logo here. Of course, with the orange thing, which does make it a little definitely distinctively different than the American style overall basic layout. I do prefer the American basic layout a little bit more because it looks like the top of a Dreamcast. But still, I like this for what it was, and I still think the overall artwork is good. It makes it look more mysterious, and you gotta love the style of the Soul Calibur logo. Love the art design they went with the lettering. Coming in at number 10 is pretty much one of the only American cover arts on this list. Coming in first at number 10, I have to give it to, of course, the original classic Shimmer. Yes, Shimmer is, a lot of people will call the game out today, especially with the bad English dub, but for me, that is what helps make the game very distinctive and unique unto itself. It's its identity, and you gotta admit, this is a very classy, like, style with the actual artwork. I love the overall just layout with also the dragon symbol in the background, of course, of obviously the medallion. But I personally love it, and I like the very simplistic, even back art and everything. I think it goes really good with the game itself, and I definitely think this is pretty solid art. Coming at number 9, arguably probably one of the louder cover arts, I would have to say, for me personally, and that is, of course, Crazy Taxi. Now, surprisingly, of course, I have what is considered like the greatest hits, or Sega, if you wish, version, with the bright orange. I think actually goes really good with the cover art of course, Crazy Taxi. And I think it is quite distinctive to show you what you're getting the game. Basically, it's going to be a completely nuts and out there, obviously, game with the gameplay perspective and stuff. It shows how crazy, given shopping buggy and stuff, you have person in the background angry and stuff. It definitely does a good job, and it goes along with even, of course, the soundtrack of the game, The Offspring. But I think the art is actually pretty much helps describe what you can expect with the actual game, which is why I like it. Plus, I like the craziness. Arguably, probably the most loud artwork of any of the games of my favorite artwork. Arguably, coming at number 8 is, of course, Jet Grind Radio, known as Jetset Radio in Japan. Jet Grind Radio, yeah, the artwork is very loud, way more loud than the more subdued, I think, style they went with Jet Set Radio Future. But I still like it, and I like the fact that Beat is right there in the cover, and it shows very basic and perfectly what the game is obviously about, that is spray painting, since it does have in his hand, of course, that right next to the logo. And I love the overall just artistic and layout design they went with the way they did the lettering and everything. I think it really does help show obviously what you're getting, and even with like the game play in the background, those with, of course, one of the main villains, if you will, of the game. I think it does overall, both front and back, really helps show you what you can expect in Jack Run Radio, which is one of the reasons why to this day this is still one of my favorite cover arts. Coming in next at number 7, I have to go with, it's a bit more simplistic maybe, but I like the mystery of the cover arts with number 7, of course, that being Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, which is still an awesome game, and hands down the Dreamcast version is obviously the best port. But with that said, I think IDOS Interactive actually did a pretty good job with the overall layout and design, with obviously the main character of the game. I actually think it looks still really good to this day, and I just love the sort of mystery it gives with the scarf and stuff over his mouth. Maybe it's because also being a big fan in the 90s of course, Spawn, and it does give you a bit of sort of like Spawn, I guess you could say, feels to it, and it goes with the whole edgy scene of the 90s, which I'll admit I was big into that stuff. And I still love to stay this game, but I definitely think the actual cover art is pretty good, and I like that it makes the main character and figure look very mysterious and make you want to know more. And in that opinion, I think it does a very good job in that. Now, arguably, next, coming in at number 6, is the last of the American artwork on the list. And that's the somewhat simplistic, but still I think excellently well done, of course, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Um, the artwork itself is, yeah, it's very simplistic for the most part, but I think it gets the point across and does a good job with, of course, having two interesting, I think, choices of characters to put on the cover art for the game. It was an interesting choice for the Capcom side going with Guile, and with the Marvel side going with Psylocke. I think was very interesting choices for the art. But funny enough, the other release ports of this game on other consoles, they chose with different artwork. This is very distinctive and unique. The Dreamcast cover art is different than any of the other ports, overall design-wise. Personally, I still like the design and layout of the cover art better in the Dreamcast version. I think it's really good, though it's definitely different. Also, I really honestly like the cover art of the back of the game as well. I mean, having, of course, in the artwork, of course, Ryu, of course, Sakura, as well as Zangief, and on the other side, Venom, Rogue, and of course, Wolverine. I think really good for the most part, and I do highly recommend this game, in general, play-wise, besides being great cover art. Now, going to the Japanese side of things. Coming in at number 5, I think it's a very well done executed art style they went with the game. And of course, that is the Japanese version cover art for Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. I think this game has some superb, excellent artwork. And I like how, like, at the front and center of the artwork is actually Chun-Yi. I think that is awesome. Of course, you have many other characters, obviously, you can see right behind, like, characters such as Alex, Ryu, and many others. And it is interesting that they end up not actually using Lord Gil in the cover art. I do think it's interesting, but I think it was probably the best perspective to go with. They end up back showing a bunch of the new faces, and the only classic character being Chun. So, if you look on both the front and the back case, they actually decide to revolve the artwork around Chun-Yi, which is interesting. To be fair, this would be, of course, the first installment, would be the only version of the game that would have her playable. Next, at number 4, we have actually a very interesting, the Japanese cover art for Street Fighter 3 Double Impact, which I think is, of course, really good with having, of course, Street Fighter 3 New Generations, as well as Street Fighter 3, well, Second Impact, of course, in Double Impact. But I think it's great artwork overall, showing obviously Ryu fighting against Alex. And this is definitely far better cover art than the American version of the game, hands down. I just like the more unique art style they went with this game, with like just the way they would draw like the muscles and everything. I just think it looks great. Of course, even on the back, you can tell they went with more pushing Alex in the artwork with this game specifically. But I think it looks great, like the fighting, the character, like, looks in their facial features. Next, coming in at number 3 is a tie between two different awesome covers. Now, which one is my personal favorite? Hard to say, but first of the two version cover arts, you have Capcom vs. SNK, the basic version, which, of course, you definitely get two very well-known characters. And I kind of get a kick out of the other version of this, the Pro version, which would end up being Joe, as well as, of course, Dan Hibiki, which I definitely think was the right route to go, but definitely these two have great cover art. It just depends, I guess, what characters you prefer. Now, personally, overall, art-wise, I do like this. I just like, one, them actually portraying Dan is actually a very serious character, and I actually appreciate that quite a bit, as a big Dan Hibiki fan. Next, second to last, coming in at number 2, I think superb cover art is Capcom vs. SNK 2. This is arguably my favorite cover art of the different versions of the game. And of course, once again, we have Chun being obviously the face or signature of the actual cover art. I think for the most part, it actually does its job really good, and I love it. Plus, it's nice again to see some older classic characters in the back. We have, of course, character from Last Blade, Samurai Showdown, the original Street Fighter, and also, of course, Rival Schools. But I think it is an excellent piece of cover art, and I would like to see more fine games honestly go back to this art style. I would love to see more Capcom games look like this again. Though the actual cover art of this is more in line with actual like SNK art style rather than the traditional Capcom. Maybe it's one of the reasons I find this so unique and different from any other Street Fighter stuff, because of obviously using the art style of SNK. It helps give it its own feel and own look and atmosphere. Coming at number 1 is the Japanese version cover art for Project Justice, also known as, of course, Rival Schools 2 to some people. But I think it does an excellent job portraying, of course, one of the main, obviously, good guys, and then the key villain in the background. I like the very serious look it goes with that, and, of course, like the glowing eye. Since, of course, he's like a psychopath, like samurai style character. It has certain things that kind of remind me a little bit of like Sephiroth, mainly because the like long sword and other elements, as well as the long hair. But this game is, of course, superb, but I think the cover art, sadly, the back cover art isn't quite as good for the most part, but in my opinion, this is my personal favorite cover art of any game for the Dreamcast. But with that said, just leave a comment below. Tell me personally, what are some of your personal favorite cover arts? What consoles specifically have overall amount of your personal favorite? Like, what are elements key that make you prefer cover art to a game? I think too many games nowadays just have like basic like art or like a picture of like from in-game models and stuff and just slap it on the cover. You know, I miss back when they would do stuff like this, very much more creative, and would actually go out of their way to give it a very unique and definitely definitive art style, which I think a lot of games nowadays could learn a lot from games like these, in my opinion. Especially with the Japanese art style, has a lot more heart and spirit involved in the actual look and design from the artistic standpoint. But with that said, yeah, like I said, this is just 10 of my personal favorite Dreamcast cover arts, or covers artwork wise. But with that said, I'll see y'all in the near future. Stay safe. See you again, same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.